From time to time, I wonder how many people get through their 70 years and 10 unscathed by the hurts of life. Never once in all their life jammed by that continual churning of their mind. Never once affected by the tumult of everything crowded into their minds. Something there troubling them, how long ago? 5 years, 25, 65 years ago, still churning. How many people can say, it doesn't worry me at all? It didn't touch me. Most of us can remember that event. Many events. Behaving like subturating unhealed ulcers on your leg. Always an uncomfortable sore. But every 6 days or so, it flares up, spreading its inflammation and irritation far and wide. Concentration becomes difficult. Focusing on the immediate task becomes difficult. Enjoying people's company becomes difficult. Getting a restful sleep becomes difficult. Because of this event, this, whatever it is, stuck in my mind. Whose mind is it? My mind. The mind, like the dart board in the local pub, sitting there, in itself helplessly waiting for the next dart to bury its thrust into the softness of the dartboard. But how unlike the human mind. The dart thrown at the dartboard can be yanked out. And the dartboard presumably feels no pain. But the human mind not only feels the pain of that dart that went into the mind, but long after the dart has been pulled out, the pain persists. The fear of a further dart persists. The anger and the resentment towards the one who shot the dart persists. And although the pain of the initial dart attack has long gone, the human mind is capable of generating other pains that spread through the mind and body and spread into other minds and other bodies, both near at hand and thousands of miles away. The pain of grief and sadness. The pain of injustice and dishonesty. The pain of war trauma. Decades ago. The pain of a quarrel between two people. When did that quarrel take place? 2 days ago, 2 years ago, 22 years ago. And there's the pain of the aftermath. Long after the cause of the quarrel has been consigned to the past, pain persists. Now, our religion is supposed to bring us some relief from these pains, but it fails. I wouldn't be surprised that many people give up religion because they felt that was its promise. It didn't deliver its promise, so it goes, have nothing more to do with it. Our religion is supposed to open the door to release us from that tight grip of our tenacious emotional pains, but it fails. Our religion is supposed to speak a word of forgiveness and reconciliation, but I tell you, it fails. There's not much forgiveness and reconciliation flowing through many people's religion, I tell you. Perhaps we want the pain to go on. Wouldn't you think we'd like the pain to cease? Freud said way back, one of our chief goals of life is to have pleasure. why then do we involve ourselves in so much pain that we inflict on ourselves and we inflict on other people and we keep it alive there? Is it because we have no satisfactory answer? So it just sits there. Perhaps we want the pain to go on because we've not settled for what we really want. We want pleasure, don't we? We want to be free of pain. So why do we hold on to our pain? Well, because the pain won't let us go. Because we haven't studied our pain, perhaps. Whatever, the pain is there. The pain persists because we have not learnt the pathway to your relief and release. So we go on talking in tongues that people can't understand. And somehow we think there's something good about that. We go on talking gibberish, like the Tower of Babel story we read today. People incomprehensible to each other. We go on talking the language of high knowledge in so many areas, but we no longer like people. As 1 Corinthians 13 said in the version I read to you today, I may be very knowledgeable about many great mysteries. I may be able to call in people to do astonishing things, but if I've lost the grace of loving people, what's the point? The beacon of the lighthouse swings round onto us. And it could ask the question, now that that dart has sunk deeply into your brain, and you are deeply hurt by it, how will you heal your brain? Do you want your brain to heal? How will you heal your brain? When our minds are troubled, we're likely to seek out people who will sympathize with our pains. And they often make it worse. Our goal is to find a way to heal the damaged brain, to find a way to quieten our troubled mind. Dr. Norman Deutsch, you've heard him speak on television just recently, in his latest book, The Brain's Way of Healing, opened the book by writing, the human brain has its own unique way of healing. Has it? Well, if it has, it's my brain, your brain. Has it a unique way of healing? The brain has a way to repair itself and to improve its functioning generally, says Dr. Deutsch. How does that happen? We know how often it does not happen. How can we help that to happen? Our brain, our mind. We do know this. Everyone has times when their minds are troubled. A life-threatening illness. The loss of a job. At a critical point in the lifespan, but at any point. The losses of various kinds. Loss. The loss of a significant person. The loss of a significant relationship. Problems in your marriage or your family. Or a problem in a family member. And your mind goes round and round. Or it's other people's behavior, what they do to us, what they said to us. A word, and we're stuck with it for weeks, for months, or years. One word. Everybody has times when they believe that their troubled minds are caused by somebody else. And this can be a source of intense distress. It frequently expands to involve more people, more, let's have more. It expands to include more issues. Let's have more. It frequently expands to incite a wide range of emotions, of anger and rage and resentment and guilt, frustration, remorse, depression, and despair. Let's have some more. We used to play as kids, stacks on the mill, more on still. We do that with our emotional life, don't we? Minds in tumult, minds in turmoil. Now, God help us. I'm supposed to be a specialist of this area of human life. And yet I have to tell you, we've hardly begun to understand the human mind. Minds in tumult, minds in turmoil. And physical illness sits there on the fence line as if waiting to swoop in and join and add to the mix. Or serious mental illness threatens to move in. It's like passers-by stop and pull your tires off your car should you leave it unattended at some out-of-the-way place. Physical illness, serious mental illness are sitting there with our troubled mind. Even when we believe our troubled minds are due to the damage of destructiveness of other people. Yes, we believe that, don't we? It's what they did to us, what they're threatening to do to us. Our damaged brain, however, needs to be repaired. No matter what other people have done, it's now affected our brain. It's now affected our mind. Our minds need to refine that essential quietness. So even where our troubled states are largely due to some devastating event out there, some distressing grief, some terrible trauma of nature, or war, or social discrimination, or injustice. All those things happen, but each of us, when our mind is troubled by those events, each of us will then be faced with three pathways. One, we respond to those things that have happened and make things worse. Two, we study and search for ways to quieten our troubled mind so that we might deal with the external situation differently. Or three, we continue to blame the war, to blame the earthquake, to blame the accident, to blame the institution, to blame other people, when the real site of healing is in ourselves. Yes, you see, when we've had a smash in our car and we're injured, it may be that the cause of the smash was the behavior of somebody else. But they will not be the healer. Even if they come and apologize, even if they're punished for what they did, they will not be the healer. We have to find healing in ourselves. People with troubled minds are likely to incubate other troubles, physical ailments, relationship discontent, loss of perspective and judgment in problem solving, increased in difficult moods, an array of destructive behaviors, a loss of focus as to what is really important. And we know that some people are more vulnerable than others to troubled minds. And some respond to interventions and treatment more quickly than others. Some are more ready than others to spin out of control into their troubled mind states. And others can withstand the stresses for a much longer period, can keep themselves in focus for much longer, can handle their fears, their anxieties much better, much longer. Some in their troubles wear out quicker than others. Some burn out quicker than others. Some become frustrated and frazzled quicker than others. Some become dangerous, more so than others. Some are strong with their internal pacifiers, and some don't know where to find their internal pacifiers. Some turn to numerous external pacifiers, and they might even make it worse. Our hurt must be healed in ourselves. And therein is a double pain. Because in addition to our physical injury, you're likely to harbour the resentment that an injustice was not sufficiently acknowledged. The resentment, the rage, the rumination gets on board your train and continues to do havoc unless you recognise it, unless you intercept it before it becomes part of your troubled mind, growing more troubled, and before other people who would support your position become additional feeders of your troubled mind. We know that many people are ready to help, but often they become what I call dedicated rumination support groups. DRSG, dedicated ruminating support groups. They are dedicated to help, but the support group supports the growth of their rumination. So everybody becomes ruminators. There's a whole book here written by an expert on ruminations, and he outlines some of those very things. He says many external triggers can set off a ruminative sequence. These could include the mere sight of the transgressor, reminders of the transgression, being hurt similarly by some other person, or even being under a lot of stress from some other cause. Internal triggers for your rumination can set off that rumination too. When people get into negative moods, they tend to ruminate. Even in the absence of external triggers, memories of intrusive images sometimes seem to pop up spontaneously, and there you are, back in the midst of your ruminations again. How will we bring some settlement to our brain, some stability to our scrambled minds? It's such an important issue. Back in 1952, would you believe it, my parents gave me Dr. Arnold Huschnecker's book called Unquiet Minds. So way back in 1952, there was a British doctor writing about how to re-establish quiet minds amidst so much unquietness. This concern, you see, has been going on for generations. Even the psalm today, Psalm 23 that I read to you, my version, speaks of the same issue, trying to find quietness for our troubled state. Just recently I brought Dr. Sidney Block's very serious, detailed book called Understanding Your Troubled Minds. It's not an easy book to read, written mostly for professionals in the field. So it pushed me to reach for my own book, much lighter and easier for me to read anyway, called Discovering Wisdom and Contentment, which I published 16 years ago. It hasn't sold very well, I might add. I suspect that people are not terribly interested in wisdom and contentment, or they didn't think I knew what I was talking about anyway. So I took down Michael Eigen's book called Flames from the Unconscious, Trauma, Madness and Faith, he called it. Well, there are three words that we might put together. We all look into the face of trauma in the world, and we see it also in the madness of human minds, our own minds. Our own minds out of control. Our own minds stuck with pain when we'd prefer to have pleasure. And it does seem appropriate, doesn't it, that we put these three words together: trauma, madness, and faith. So let's listen to the faith for a moment. And I'm going to refer just for a moment to the depths of that well-known psalm that I read to you, Psalm 23. It speaks of stillness, still waters. It speaks of restoring my soul. It speaks of the quietening power of a good presence. That's your Bible. Speaking to our troubled minds, speaking wisdom and contentment. Well, does it say anything about the healing of our troubled minds? Even though trouble remains? Yes, it does. It says the anxiety of our mortality will always be there. The threats to our existence are forever there. The awareness of our enemies can be tamed, but enemies will always be our reality. The soullessness of our daily life will always be searching for the restoration of the soul. That pathway from birth through the development of our body and our mind, through the experiences of our troubled minds, will continue. And the quest for a quiet mind and for wisdom and contentment will continue. So what does it say? Our faith says this. Good psychology says this. Take time to refocus and rebalance your life. If you like, speak chemistry to your body. Let the chemistry of your body settle, to allow your mind to bring a new soulfulness to the center of your life. Because if your chemistry is all jumbled up, your mind, your capacities to cope, your general well-being will be in a mess. So number one, take time to refocus and rebalance your life. Have you heard that said in this place before? Number two, come to terms with the calmness of life. The calmness of life. It is there, but we don't wait for it. We don't come to terms with it. We're always too busy. We're always too troubled. We're always telling people that they should be doing something to relieve our troubles, when in fact we need to come to terms with the calmness that is one of the givens of life. Number three, cultivate and contribute to the inspirations of your life. They're there, a given of life. Number four, make contentment your goal. Contentment that will enrich your life and also the life of others. One of the early tasks of therapeutic psychology is to get a troubled mind to talk early of what is being incubated in that early tumult of the mind. I said one of the tasks of contemporary therapy is that, but it's been one of the tasks, one of the propositions, one of the advice of the generation. Shakespeare said it for sorrow and grief. He said, in Macbeth, he said, give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak whispers the o'erwrought heart and bids it break. Give sorrow words. When we are the victim of some event, some personal invasion, some interpersonal offence, we're likely to become the victim of a mind that has run out of control. We hear people in our present social arena today around us once again uttering their reactions about some distressing event out there, many events. And we hear people saying, isn't it terrible? Isn't it terrible? The perpetrators should be punished. Because people never get over those traumas. And again and again we become victims of a widespread ignorance, a kind of self-satisfied false wisdom. For the facts are these: people do get over these things. There are treatments for these things. Why do some people march on and others become lifelong tragedies? The truth is that some people do get over it. Why do they get over it and others don't? How can we help those who don't do what others do? We see all too many examples of how we're still lost in the realms of folklore, of tales, instead of recognizing the enormous gains of contemporary science, contemporary therapy. And we could become part of a liberating religion instead of being stuck with a religion that is largely ineffective in terms of releasing us from our ruminating helplessness. We believe in the healing of the body, don't we? We need to believe also in the healing of the mind. We believe in the goals of contentment. We need to believe in finding the pathways that lead to contentment and study them. So often we're no longer listening for the benefits of the therapies around us, but we settle for some kind of ruminative, self-satisfied helplessness. So often our minds can be loaded with troubles, and we close our minds. We say, that's what I've got, and I can't do anything about it. We're closed off to the healing that is required. So we give full vent to our troubles, and we don't see that the real issue is to get quietness to our troubles, healing to our mind. We need to study more what it means to have a healthy mind. So much fear and angry, accusatory behaviour have gone into our hurtful words of people who are sick in the head, sick in the mind. It shows somewhat how we're still deeply fearful of the mind. Was a time when we were just as fearful of the body, especially certain sicknesses of the body. But the mind is still a source of fear. We need to move from that. Move to focus on what constitutes a healthy mind, what constitutes a contented mind, and what can give us a quiet mind. And just as we are better at designating those things that give us a healthy body, so we need to be clearer about those conditions that will bring a healthy, untroubled mind, those environments that are important to the mind, those activities that are protectors of the mind. One of the biggest challenges to our humanity is the growing numbers of people with troubled minds on a large scale. And one of the big challenges in our individual life is how many of us individuals have unquiet minds and either lack the interest or the know-how for finding effective ways to restore that essential quietness that we all need. Will religion do it? Some expressions of religion may yet be helpful. Will psychology do it? Some forms of psychology may yet be helpful. But we're all in a peculiar state of not knowing how to heal our mind, how to quieten troubled minds. And yet that remains our task. And it can be an exciting task of growth, understanding, and helping each other, being aware and alert to the wide fields of learning and research that are now taking place to open up the human brain to its healing, to open up the human mind to its quietness that it so much needs. Would you please stand? And so I give you the blessing for this day. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.